Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the January 19th, 2016 meeting of the Milton Conservation Commission. The Commission is appointed by the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Milton to implement the rules and regulations of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Milton Town Bylaw, which governs wetlands. As a matter of formality, 2 points. One is that everything's recorded here, and if you wish to speak, you are certainly welcome to do so, and ask that you come forward and identify yourself for the record. Secondly, as a matter of formality, we always introduce ourselves.
Judith Darrell Kemp.
My name is John Kiernan.
Michael Blute.
Arthur Doyle.
Ingrid Beatty.
Kathy Bones.
First on the agenda is a request for amendment of determination of applicability at 175 Governor Stoughton Lane. This is a matter that involves Pulte, and I have in the past indicated that my law firm represents Pulte in some other matters, not this matter certainly, but as a matter of caution and to avoid any suggestion of conflict, I have and continue to recuse myself, so I will absent myself from the room. Thank you very much. Michael?
Yep. Okay. So do you want to introduce yourself just for the record, and then we can...
Sure. My name is Mark Camo. I'm the Senior Land Acquisition Manager for Pulte Homes of New England, offices at 115 Flanders Road in Westborough, Massachusetts, and I'm going to let this gentleman introduce himself. How's that?
Yeah, and I'm Mickey Marcus. I'm a wetland biologist, and I'm representing Pulte.
All right. We're here tonight, as the John said, for...
Me too.
Oh, you too?
William Clark, I'm the planning director for the town of Milton. I'm here representing the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you.
Actually, the trustees of the Governor Stoughton estate,
That's right.
who are also our selectmen.
Okay, thank you. So tonight, we're here for a request for an amendment for the determination of applicability. We have a plan up on the pedestal there to talk about doing some stormwater testing.
That's right.
And, Mickey will go through the plans and how they go through it. There's some buffer zone work. It doesn't go through the wetlands at all. We've amended it from the plan that I think that you had already received. There was some concern about whether we were crossing or skirting into some wetlands. So we've changed the plan a little bit, and Mickey can walk you through that, what we've done. We've also, this is not unlike what we did, I think, about a year ago, where we did some, ledge probes down there. So very, very similar, through the same sort of territory, and utilizing the same path systems. So I'd like to turn it over to Mickey, and Mickey can kind of walk you through that. Unless you have...
I do have two questions. One is the same equipment that was necessary for the ledge probes necessary for this, or are we talking smaller equipment? Because that was a big concern at that time. And the second question is, are these areas being probed for potential sites for wetland remediation, kind of remediation areas? Is that why? I'm just trying to understand why you're looking at these sites in the location.
Yeah. Well, the last test that we did was actually a drilling machine that drilled a hole that was a couple of inches, and it determined the depth of the ledge.
Right.
This machine here is an excavator. It's a track machine that's like that hydraulic drill that you used before.
Sure.
It doesn't look the same. It's an excavator, a big, large yellow machine.
Okay.
But it's on tracks. It's the similar type of motivation, how it travels through. It doesn't have wheels. It has tracks on it.
But it's on the scale of a backhoe, or it's on the scale of a bobcat?
It's on the scale of a backhoe, but a backhoe would normally mean a wheeled machine. I don't like to use them because they sort of dig down. They're on a track machine, it spreads the weight out a lot more. So an excavator is like a backhoe. It has a type of a dipper stick and a shovel at the end of it. The purpose of it is to actually dig a hole so that we can determine where the groundwater is for a stormwater system.
Okay. Thank you.
And I had a quick question, too. This plan is dated 12/17 of 15, but it's a continuation, isn't it, of much earlier plans that we had? Bill, when did this begin? Wasn't it 11 or 12?
Yeah, so it is, the plan you're looking at is just, it was done by a different engineer who's doing the stormwater planning for Pulte. So that's why it's just a different date, different plan. So just to answer your question, the purpose of this is once you have done a project layout design, you have some idea of where your stormwater system is going to be located. DEP stormwater regulations require that you do soil testing to confirm the NRCS soil types and also confirm the separation between groundwater and where your basin is. So they're looking for, in the design, that there's at least a 2-foot separation between high groundwater and the bottom of your basin. So the only way to do that is when you're doing a planning design, they're still in like a preliminary design, layout, grading, but what the engineer Marchionda and Associates have done is they've located key areas that they would like to use for some sort of stormwater management. So the idea is to go and test those areas. If they're not appropriate, they're not going to get used. So the soil information would then be used to go back and, is this area that they've identified actually suitable or not?
Okay.
Did that answer your question? Okay. I'm just going to, I know we were here a year ago for the drilling. I just want to remind you, and I actually called DEP and spoke to them today just to confirm so the Mass Wetlands Protection Act exempts soil testing, excavation, sort of the work related to stormwater or septic system design, but your bylaw doesn't. And I know when we proposed the soil testing the last time, you put together a pretty extensive series of controls, right? You wanted a consultant on the site. You wanted yellow caution tape. You wanted to make sure the areas were restored. And so when Pulte went out there, they followed all the rules. They had a wetland scientist out there. They had the people out there. They really did what they said they should do. I guess what I'm saying is they have a track record of being responsible. The only thing I would say for this project is, Mark and I were talking, this is a good time of year. Winter is actually a good time to do soil testing. The ground's frozen. Mark was concerned that when you dig a hole in the ground, these holes tend to be 10 to 12 feet deep. So you need an excavator capable of digging a big hole in the ground. You log the soils, you look for groundwater, you fill the hole back in. Mark was suggesting that in the winter time, it's hard to get a good, clean surface. And so what he'd want to do is have crews go back by hand in the spring and make sure the holes were in fact filled in and seeded or restored as necessary. It's hard to do that with frozen ground. It's hard to do that if there's snow cover. So that would be the idea there.
Okay. Did you have anything? I mean, in terms of, I had a chance to walk the site. I just want to, and based on the performance of the work that you've done so far, based on the guidelines that we had provided you last year, everything seemed to be right where it needed to be.
Thank you.
In terms, one of you talked about the yellow tape. In walking the site, I noticed that the wetland delineation flags, they are there in some areas, but they're starting to, they're not, they are deteriorating in some areas. And just the idea that the use of additional kind of verification so that there's no confusion about where those lines are. Did everyone else get a chance to walk the site?
I did not.
You did not?
I did, and I found exactly the same results that you found, Michael, and in a number of instances where the wetland flags were not up, they were on the ground in the vicinity of where they had been up. So I was very, very comfortable, and going to the point that was stated, the restoration of the boring areas was very, very impressive. So I have total confidence that Pulte will be restoring these sites with the same high quality that I saw in the boring sites.
Okay. Did you have a chance to walk the site?
I did not get a chance to walk the site. Of course, I read the materials, and so 160 trees are being removed to do these borings. Am I reading that correctly?
Not really. I guess.
Just looking at
I
the,
think that number is skewed.
Yeah.
I mean, they might have been overly conservative in their interpretation. There are trees to be removed. The vast majority of those are small, very small caliper.
Saplings.
Yeah, saplings. There were some larger, and that's why I was asking about the size of the equipment, because there were some larger trees that had been tagged for removal. But for the most part, based on the layout that they had provided, they're sticking to the path, which is the clearest route through the site.
When the surveyor went out there, he basically counted everything, including every little sapling, and I think he did a good job. I think so he counted all the trees, like for instance, in this area here, in this entire area, there are 90 trees, there are 10 saplings, 10 small trees and 80 saplings. So that's the total number of trees in that area. But they're just going to go in there and dig 3 holes. So that's, I think he was just trying to be as conservative and as honest as possible.
Yeah,
so in that particular area, 75 trees are listed, and 10 trees 3 to 4 inches or greater. So are you saying that's not in fact, what's going to happen?
That's what's in the entire area.
Okay.
So they don't need to clear the forest. But there are trees that will get cut. There are saplings that'll get cut. But it's not going to be. They don't have to clear cut this. Is what I'm saying.
How many trees will be taken from that area? That's what I want to know. If it's not 160 trees, then how many will be cut from that area?
I don't think I can answer.
Well, that's the maximum, Judith. It's just, what we did is we went overboard on counting all of the trees. So the way that would go in there and do that is a little bit more surgical. So we'd cut as the least amount of trees that we can in order to get the job done.
But the maximum could be 75 trees.
That's right.
are
The
cut
maximum
in
could
that
be
area.
75, right.
And so maybe it's going to only be 5 or 10, but it could be up to 75, and you don't know at this point. You
Well,
don't
I'm gonna
have
run
a more
it.
precise.
Right. I marked the trees out, and I'm going to run the operation. I ran the last operation. So I'm really going to be calling the trees out as we get in there and trying to save trees. But we surveyed out more so that I wouldn't be cutting 50 trees down and then cut 60, and the board would say you cut more trees than you told
I
us.
appreciate that, Mark. I know you'll do it correctly, but I just would like to know beforehand a little bit. So because when people all along here call us and say, what's with the 25 trees, we'll know beforehand.
Sure.
Because, these people who live next to Town Farm feel a great deal of ownership, as do the rest of the people in Milton. So we have to be extremely careful, as you know, how this gets done. And I'm reluctant to give you carte blanche just to say, do your best. I'd like to know beforehand a little more clearly exactly how many trees. And it seems to me you should be able to get a little better idea of between 5 and 75 what
Well,
it's
it's not
going to
5,
be.
it's in 75. If there's an area there, if Area 3 says 75 trees, probably the best that I could do would be a 10%. I could cut less by 7.5 trees. But Judith, most of those that were counted, we counted trees that were right down to 1 inch.
Right.
Right.
I understand that, but you also counted trees that were 3 to 4 inches, which
Yeah,
is,
of
that
course.
big, and they could be 30 feet high.
Yes.
Of course.
Yeah. I think we should talk about this as being trees and saplings, not trees categorically.
I agree, only when it's 65 saplings, that ain't nothing, so to speak.
Sure. Ingrid, you
In my mind, maybe, not to minimize anyone's questioning, but maybe the more important question is, is there ever a breakdown as to the genus and the species of the tree? If they're volunteer weed trees, it's less important than perhaps some native valuable habitat sort of trees. Was that done when your scientists mapped out the trees?
No, we didn't do that.
No, we had done a habitat assessment of trees as
Years
part of
ago,
the
probably in
ANRAD.
trials
So
or
we
so.
had, the species of trees, the types of trees. Part of, if you look at this, map here, we're basically talking about saplings. So these areas are kind of avoiding, there's some very nice mature trees off in the wetlands and areas, and these are kind of avoiding those areas.
Is that worth asking the question? I'm not asking for any kind of comprehensive, to every single tiny one like that, but, I mean, if they are good quality, wildlife habitat, native trees, maybe it's worth saving, if not, maybe
My
not so much.
inclination is, walking through the site, that the caliber of the trees that we're talking about, for the most part, is small. There were some larger trees that were tagged, but in terms of the quantity of trees that we're talking about in the areas that we're talking about are, I wouldn't say, they're not, I don't feel that it's going to be a significant impact even to the localized area that they're proposing. Understanding that they need to dig the pits in order to evaluate the ground, there's anything within the area of that pit will need to be removed, and
Right.
Swing space of the equipment, and then a path to get into that. But the quantity of trees that are on the site in these areas is, we're talking about a very small percentage of the quantity of trees that are on the site, or even in the
I'm
local,
sorry, I didn't
even
get a
in.
chance to walk it.
Yeah.
Nothing jumped out either.
No,
one of you
we're not talking about,
Valuable.
opening up an area that is the only stand of trees on the site, or the only stand of trees in an area. The entire area, this is the zone that's really open, which is back here. When you get, there's a lot of heavy brush and thorn when you get back in this
On the way
side.
down.
On the way down, and then that whole end of the site is really heavily treed, pretty much across the board. It's like, paintbrush strokes.
I think it's fair to say, in response to your question, if I interpret correctly, that most of the saplings were digit-sized.
And the fact that they're proposing to travel by the existing path for the majority of the kind of circulation that they're proposing through the site, to me is kind of appropriate for what they're proposing to
But
do.
Michael, this is the existing path, right? So coming in here, but then in addition, this is a new area to go over to that area.
Yes, yep.
So that, in fact, is a new area they'll be coming through with the heavy equipment.
Yes.
I think they should be able to give us a more exact number, particularly of the larger trees that you'll be cutting down. You know your equipment, you know exactly how it works. You should be able to tell us they will be coming in this way. I know they'll be taking down 4 trees, or they'll be taking down 14 trees. Even if you just tell us the larger trees and not the saplings, I'd be much more comfortable when people ask, what are they doing cutting down 100 trees or whatever, to say, no, I know exactly, they're taking down 10 trees over here and 2 over there, and that sort of thing. Not this sort of a range.
Understanding that concern, if we were to have a site walk on Saturday, to go through, and you were in a position to be able to, the trees are tagged at this time, would you, does that sound, that gives us an opportunity? Because my view on this, and having walked the site and looked at what they're proposing to do, I have a question concerning one area that they're proposing, just in terms of its viability for a future use, for an excavation or a use of kind of modification. But the other areas I don't. And I believe that in general this is in line with the proposal that they had proposed before. And I believe that an amendment would be appropriate based on the guidelines that were used for the previous Understanding a better quantification of the trees, that you're asking for that, and if we were to do a site walk and have that information tagged, and we could review it personally on Saturday, I feel that that would resolve that. I would hope that that would resolve your issues concerning. But in general, I believe that this is directly in line with what they had proposed before, and as long as, it sounds like the equipment is smaller than, which is what my concern was, is that they were coming through with equipment that was as large as they had before, that was a concern. But I also believe that what they had said about doing the work in the wintertime, I believe that that's true. It means that there's going to be less damage to the ground.
I appreciate that. It's
Yeah.
definitely better to go when the ground is frozen.
So, go ahead. Cool.
Going back to your point about what trees are coming down.
Just how many, Bill? I'm,
I know,
not
with-
even the species,
minus-
just how many
Minus that
trees
one
exactly?
road that goes to the left,
Yes.
because that's new. I could tell you how many trees are coming down from this plan. There's no tree, when they say saplings, there is no sapling bigger than my thumb, where they put down the trees, and they said anything 3 to 4 inches. Those are exact numbers. At the same time, if they come in and they don't have to take it down, the engineer has already said, I'm not going into, and he's already looked at these particular sites, I'm not going over there's too many trees. I'll go over here because there's less trees. If I'm working here, I can save that tree. I mean, they've already looked at where they want to put the hole so that they don't have to take down the trees. The only one I can't tell you where the trees are coming down is on that leg to the left. Any other one, they're within this. And that number, it says 30 in this one, it says 75 in this one. 75 they're smaller than my thumb.
Right, I understand that.
Yeah, we talked about that.
But at the same
before.
time, they're saying 10 3 to 4 inch trees. There may be 5 by the time they finish. They wanted to make sure that if there was a shock factor, it's here. It's not going to be when you look at it on the ground.
Right.
Well, Michael, to your idea, I don't think we need to walk the site to see, because I'm certainly not going to be in a position to say, no, don't put your equipment there, put
No.
it there. I don't
No,
know
but in
enough
terms
about
of-
it.
in
All I
order to-
want to know
yeah.
is the exact number of trees that are coming down to a better certainty. So if you can come back next week or the week after, having gone through this again yourself, and, put in the file that this is exactly how many trees we're taking out, within a 10% range, then that's okay.
Well, that's
But
what I've already
this-
done for you, Judy. I already said 10%. I can't give you, I wish I could, but I can't go out there and tell you that there's going to be 62 trees. What we have to do when we go out in the machine is, we're talking about the field conditions right now. And I can't nail down, what I've done is I've gone a little bit over so that you're not going to be disappointed that we cut more trees down than I told you. And I can't put ourselves in a position where we're going to be out in the field where we need 3 or 4 more trees, and I've already met my quota.
Okay, so in an attempt to resolve this, if we schedule a site walk, they're able to verify and make sure that the trees, and if we want you to, if they could better quantify by refining the numbers that they have, either by saying that those are the numbers that they are standing by, or by looking at them and deciding that they might be able to reduce the number by walking it, we'll be in a position to walk the site if you're not comfortable with the numbers that they provide, and at the same time to provide, kind of resolve the issue. Do you feel like, I guess I'm proposing that we do a site walk and resolve the issue on site. Are there other issues than the quantity of trees that you have concerns about?
I have concerns about the sheer number of trees that they are specifying.
Okay, beyond that, because I'm
And-
assuming we can resolve that on a site
Well,
walk.
I'm not sure we could, Michael, and I don't think it would help to do a site walk. I'm usually all in favor of site walks, but in this particular instance, they will know exactly how big the equipment is and where it's going and what holes need to be bored and all that. I'm simply saying that for the very high numbers I'm looking at here, and it seems to be a little bit of a guess, I'd like to have a more exacting number that they can come back and give us without a site walk.
What's your aversion? Having walked the site, and looked at what
As
they
we
have
have.
tagged,
Yes.
I believe that I believe the numbers that they provided are conservative and on the high side, and I also believe that the quantity of trees and the areas in which the saturation of the trees in that area, that I don't believe that these are a significant percentage of the trees that currently exist in those areas. I don't understand your resistance to having a site walk, to being able to look at what's there and what they've tagged for potential removal and being able to resolve it that way. I don't understand that. What's the aversion to a site walk?
Well, I would do a site walk. I just don't think that the site walk is going to, I think it's unnecessary. That's what I'm saying. I think a site walk is unnecessary in terms of finding out exactly how many trees are being removed. I want to be able to say to neighbors when they, get in touch with us, exactly what's going on and how many trees are coming out of there. And on a site walk, I'm not going to oppose what's going on, because I am not in a position to say you shouldn't be doing this, you should be doing something else. But in an amendment that they're coming in for, we should have an exact idea of exactly how many trees and not an estimation. That's all I'm saying. So a site walk isn't really going to affect it.
Correct me if I'm wrong, as I understand it, they have done an exact count, and the exact count is what they presented us with. What they've said is that this is the exact count that they have estimated, and that they suspect that there'll be a 10%, as great of a 10% reduction in this. And that gives us an exact quantity and count minus a potential 10%.
We didn't get to it.
I'm not sure, until they actually take the equipment into the site and the operator drives the equipment through and figures out whether he can turn it a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right as he drives through. I don't believe that we're going to get a specific number, a better understanding of the numbers than that. Because it's the operator who is going to be taking the equipment through the site that is going to determine, or who's going to have the biggest impact or control over the site and what trees need to be taken down. I'm sorry.
Well, the one thing that a site walk could answer, though, is if there's a particularly valuable
I totally agree with that.
tree of species or variety that we would like to preserve. That's the one thing that we
Right.
could ascertain at that point. And so, given the route that you guys can take, if given you have some wiggle room, if there is something that really we feel needs to be preserved, we can say, can you avoid that one?
Yeah,
Right.
sure,
Right?
yeah.
I
So
totally
that's one
agree.
thing that I'm not sure about the numbers, but that's one thing that we could accomplish.
But I think the sidewalk also gives you a
If
sense.
we agree on that
What-
tree.
On that tree, right, yes.
And-
Yeah.
We're not going to split hairs on a sidewalk.
Right, no
Right.
question. But I think, there are certain varieties that we have around here, and there's a whole lot of weed trees that frankly
Right.
grow up in disturbed areas that are,
And
I
we
think
also
they've looked
have-
at, they've looked at those particular trees, and if you were out there, you noticed that the ones that had the ribbons around them that
Yes.
is coming down were not the tree that we're trying to save.
Right.
Correct.
I think we're talking about context. And the best way, you can look at the numbers and the numbers say something to you, but until you get a sense of context, you really can't understand the whole picture. And I'm sorry, you had a comment.
I was going to say, just along the same lines, is that if the commission decides that they want the environmental monitor out there, I think one of the purposes would be to have that monitor make sure that any significant trees are specifically not cut. And that's going to what you're saying, is that part of the purpose is not just staying out of the wetlands, but they can say, okay, well, this is, a particularly nice oak or whatever's out there, and leave that one alone, and then direct the machine operator away from those areas. So I think that the monitor can serve that purpose as well, is to make sure that.
Just a quick response to that. That's a very good idea from my perspective, particularly where the identification of the trees in the absence of leaves is going to be more difficult. So having somebody with that expertise would be very much to our advantage for the purposes that you put on the table.
Okay, well, let's do that then.
You're okay with that?
Okay,
Okay.
I'm
So-
hearing what you're saying.
Are you open to having a site, kind of extending this discussion to a site walk? And is this Saturday
I
work for?
can't do this Saturday or the next. I can do anything after that. I can't do the next two.
Well, can it be done without you? If we have a majority?
This is the
Yeah.
19th. The next
We can't have
Saturday is
John.
the 23rd, and then the 30th, and then the 6th of February. I can do the 6th, I can do the 13th, I can,
I can't do the 6th. I don't know if you need me.
Okay,
I can, I'm free on all of them.
okay.
If we're going to have expertise on site, we need a sidewalk.
I think that personally, I'm of the opinion that what they're proposing, with the exception of one area that I'd like to talk about, I'm of the opinion that what they're proposing is in line with a modification of what we had discussed previously, as long as those, the requirements for that work applied in this case as well.
You can do the 6th?
I can't do, yes, I can do the 6th.
Okay.
Yes.
Does that work for everybody
Yeah, the
else? I
6th
know
works.
you can't come.
Yeah, the 6th works for me. I can't do after the 6th, I'm gone for the
I
2
can't do
weeks
it
after
after
that.
either, but-
Yeah.
That should be okay.
Okay.
So we'll table this until the 6th, and the intent there would be to verify that you're comfortable with the numbers that we're talking about here. The only thing I can think of is making sure that we have a ribbon of some kind that we can tie on trees that we want to flag as being safe, something that's distinctive from the other, whatever else we're using.
Would you mind just showing the one area that you had a concern about?
Yes, area number 3. So area number 3, which is a,
Oh, this is where that dog leg
it's
is?
this zone here, which is actually, I don't have the proper geological term. It's actually like a butte. It's a mound,
Drumlin.
drumlin. Okay, so this drumlin, which is actually 2 mounds, a large mound here and there, is not inherently apparent to be conducive to kind of excavation, because you're talking about a high point between two existing wetlands. My concern would be that doing any excavation in that area would potentially disrupt the 2 adjacent wetlands. And that's what I started the conversation. The first question one of the first questions I had asked was, were you proposing this for remediation areas, and trying to understand, were you proposing to remove the drumlin that was there in order to kind of reconstruct the new wetland to offset something? The idea of doing something there doesn't seem logical to me, and I'm just trying to understand where that's coming from.
Well, I think it's just a target area right now that we could put some retention of stormwater in. How large that would be, it wouldn't be necessarily where you see all of the test pits. We're doing 3 different test pits in that area. It could be substantially smaller, you know.
Yeah.
It's just a candidate for an area right now, and then it would have to be
Check with the
designed.
engineer.
You know, it's a high point.
Yeah,
You know what I
we
mean?
understand your point, though.
Yeah. And the idea of doing a large excavation into a high point, I mean, I actually suspect that's a high point because there's rock in there, right? So,
Yeah, could very well be.
the idea of excavating to that when we have 2 adjacent wetlands on either side of it isn't naturally conducive to, you know.
I understand.
They actually chose that area because of the rock that you're going around. Like that
Yeah,
leg to the
I-
left,
yeah.
there's a huge rock in
Yeah,
there.
there's a
Not
big-
rocks.
They're like this, trying to figure out,
It's a
what do I do
house
with that?
of stuff.
Where they wanted their system was where the rock is, and you're not moving that rock.
No, nobody's,
Oh,
the 2 of them.
yes.
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
should we meet on this day, since we're coming all the way over here?
I still think the town farm, the animal shelter is the best place to walk in from, and the path is very clear.
Very good.
And I don't think that there's a good way to park on
There
Unquity.
is not.
It's dangerous.
It's the only way to go.
It's dangerous. So area number 3 is my area of concern.
Okay.
Understanding that going forward, how you propose to use that, I have concerns about, but in general, I feel like what you're proposing is in line with what we had
Okay.
talked about before, and an amendment would be,
So you'll vote right there,
Yes.
perhaps? You know, that's
Correct.
going to be a regular meeting?
that would be the
Regular
intent.
meeting, yes.
So will we have someone who's expert in tree identification of bark and tree?
On site at that time.
Do you have someone
We'll
available
have
that
someone from- yeah.
you have someone coming available that
Good.
can help flag anything that needs to be flagged?
Good point.
Great.
That's good?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep. So John is, we're going to table for a minute to bring John back.
Did you set a time for that? February 6th meeting?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock, okay. Missed that part.
Already got mine, but need my card.
Yes, if I could, just in case it has to be canceled for any reason, if I have the contact information. Just in case we get too much snow.
Thank you. Good
Thank
seeing
you.
you as well.
Thank you.
You're all set. Yep.
Okay, next on the agenda is notice of intent, 167 Woodland Road. This is a continued hearing. Mr. Sullivan, welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Paul. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure, my name is Paul Sullivan. I'm Smith Road, Milton. I'm here to discuss two proposals for a peer review of wetland delineation at 151 Woodland Road. I guess the commission received two proposals on the peer review, and I'm here to find out what the commission wishes to do regarding the two proposals.
All right, I note that this is not in order of priority, just what appears in the file. The first one is from Steve Ivas, and he points out some discrepancies, and I think he refers to them as incorrect forms and analysis, and his is fairly complete. I noticed that he's got a total dollar amount, and I know that's of significance to the applicant, of $2,375. Although that includes 3 hours that is optional.
Correct.
Optional. And even if we knock that out, it's $125 an hour. The other proposal comes from Lenore White, and by the way, for the public's benefit, we've worked with both of these botanists, and they're both highly qualified and well-respected, at least among this commission. And hers is a little shorter, and the dollar amount comes out to $1,000, and I'm not exactly sure how to compare them. Steve Ivas is a little bit more detailed in what he proposes to do. I know cost is an issue, and we're not insensitive to that, but I was impressed, or at least I focused in on the points that Steve Ivas made. And Paul, do you have any comments on that in terms of, it looks like there was a wrong approach, that some of Michelle Grenier's analysis was unsupported. I'm looking at vegetation was noted at more than 50% upland, but there's no supporting information. And then there was a second, the soil map. He's got it says here, the soil map contrasts with the soil map shown with the notice of intent. So there are some discrepancies, and I'm a little concerned with that. So in order to help us make a decision as to whether we go with Lenore White or Steve Ivas, can you at least address those points that were made by Steve Ivas?
Sure. We're actually in the process of, we reviewed them in the process of making some changes to our application to address those issues that he brought up. He doesn't mention, as far as the soils map, he doesn't really say what the difference is between what was submitted. But I did notice that in his soils map, it seems that most of the lot area that seems to be upland soils, that is, other than the rear section that was flagged, is hydric. But we will, prior to the next meeting, submit information regarding all these issues that he raised.
Any questions among the
Well,
questions?
a couple, well, not questions, as much comments. So in looking at Lenore's proposal, she provides an estimate and doesn't really provide backup in terms of time, and doesn't really, the estimated price it doesn't indicate that that's an upset limit. Whereas Steve, I think, has overdone some of his hours. He's indicated there's 4 hours of field review, plus 4 hours of soils and vegetation, that's 8 hours on site, plus an additional 2 hours for the delineation point, kind of. So I'm not sure the site is big enough to warrant the level of review that he said, and he's indicated that his reviews, his values are based on an upset limit or not to exceed. So he recognized, from my perspective, he recognizes that he's indicated more time and indicated that that's the maximum value it would be. And then there would be a reduction of 375, which would bring it down to the 1,000 versus 2,000. I don't know whether what he's proposing actually comes all the way down to the $1,000 that Lenore is proposing. But as you say, his review and evaluation seems to be thorough from the get-go. So I'm not, his seems more thorough. The dollar value is ambiguous on hers, other than just a total, and it's an estimate. It's not listed as a not to exceed. So I'm not sure that that's going up or down depending on what she ends up doing on site.
Can I, Mr. Chairman, on paragraph 5, he has 10 hours of site work on that site to review. I don't know why he's got 2 trips there, first of all.
I had the same question, yeah.
I mean, there isn't that much work really there.
Yeah, I don't-
I've seen plenty of
Yeah,
wetlands
he may be
delineated.
overestimating.
I can't
yeah.
imagine anybody spending 10 hours at that site just to cover those
Yeah.
issues.
And-
And it also looks like he doesn't want to go there into the spring on top of it, so he's not going to be there in the winter conditions dealing with the situation, from my review. And I
I think
actually,
that would be true for both. I mean, we're kind of hung up on
yeah, I
the
assume
foliage. It's not
no, I
coming back
assume
until the spring.
we're at
anyway.
that position now. I understand that. And I actually, Michael, my reading of it is that he's not saying there's any upside. His proposal is open.
No,
from what I read.
he clearly on the, what page is that, the third page?
Page
Fourth
4 or
page.
5.
The fourth, yeah, 4 or 5, subtotal upset limit cost. So he's saying the upset limit, and he talks about this being invoiced on an hourly basis. He says, performs tasks on an hourly basis and does not charge by the lump sum, travel included. The task summary is estimated as an upset limit. Hours not used will not be charged. Approval of the client will be required for FERT to expand upon them. So he's very clear about, I think he's overestimated his time, and therefore the cost of the work is indicated higher than I think it will end up being. But he's given himself some kind of conservative estimate, and then he said that he won't exceed that value. So I have more confidence in his proposal than in Lenore's proposal, just because he's provided more information. But Lenore's proposal is significantly less. I mean, if taken at face value, she's half the cost. I don't know if that means he has doubled his estimation about what it's going to take. I think he's overestimated significantly.
I got the impression he was deliberately overestimating, and I think there's a lot of value even in the information that he provided.
He provided just in, yeah.
right
I
here.
agree.
Whether that's built into this estimate or not, I don't know. But if we want to compare apples to apples
Right.
and oranges to oranges, and I think we need to go back to what was her name?
Lenore White.
Lenore, and have her clarify, because it's
Right.
very difficult to compare these two. They're very
I
different
agree,
proposals.
and clearly, if we ended up going with Lenore White, we'd ask her the same questions that have been posed by Steve Ivas. Do you know, I couldn't figure it out from her proposal, but I don't know what her hourly rate is, but I'm not upset by the 125. I think that's within the norm of what we see. I don't know what you, and I'm not asking you, Paul, you don't have to answer
Sure,
this
no,
question, but
no,
I don't
I-
know what you're paying Michelle Grenier, but I don't think 125 is out of line.
Yeah, I'd just say his hours seem pretty excessive, but, and once somebody gets a contract, it's tough to control the circumstances of the contract, but,
True.
since we're going to wait to the spring apparently anyways, I don't see there's any rush to make a decision tonight.
Good.
If you want to get more information from Lenore to see what her proposal encompasses, that's fine with me. 'Cause-
Kathy, could you call her and ask her, number one, what's her hourly rate? And number two, how does she break this down in terms of tasks and time devoted to particular tasks?
Okay.
And I think,
Just an observation, you're going to redo the maps, right? From what you
Yes.
just said. I would suggest that each of them be asked to review in the presence of the redrawn maps.
You mean to redo their proposal?
Yes, that's
in light of
correct.
the new maps?
That's right.
That's probably fair to both of them. Although I don't know how much time they want to put into
Yeah,
the
really.
bid process. It's
Yeah.
just not a huge bid, a huge contract.
But it is fair, and it's balanced.
That's fair and balanced. What, time-wise, what can you give us as an estimate of time to redo the maps?
we should be able to have it in for, when's the next meeting?
The 9th of February.
9th of February. Do we have a sense of when either botanist thought the weather would be conducive to?
Yeah, hang on, Paul. Thanks.
Are we looking at March or April or?
Probably the beginning of April for them
Beginning of
to
April.
go out and see what's coming up and,
What's growing.
yeah, what's growing and such.
So I guess I'm going to be here for the 50 Robins in February to, again, we're waiting till the spring. But we're going to discuss the proposals on that. And so why don't I plan on the 9th, and then if we're not going to have it, I'll let Kathy know that it'll have to be March, but we'll try to get the plans ready for the meeting on the 9th.
Oh, okay, but do you think you could get them ready for the meeting on the 9th in sufficient time that we could get them back to Lenore White
Yeah, we'll
and
get-
Steve Ivas?
Yeah, to review their proposals.
Okay,
Sure.
all right, that makes sense. I think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Comments, questions from the public about it? Hearing none, we'll continue this until February 9th.
Okay.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
February 9th.
Right.
6th. Our site walk, what?
Right, the sidewalk's the 6th, right?
Yes.
The sidewalk.
Yeah, it says, you don't know about it.
Yes.
February.
You're not going, so don't worry about it. We spared you.
Thank you. All right.
That's right.
Is it right?
Yes.
It just seems like it's, like we lost, like this is really late in the month and that's.
6 is Saturday.
All right.
There you go.
Sunday.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
All right, next on the agenda is request for a certificate of compliance, 85 Parkwood Drive. Welcome, Bob.
Good evening, my name is Robert Hannigan, engineer for the project certificate of compliance at 85 Parkwood Drive. Did a survey of the existing. We had done a notice of intent back in 2000, and the homeowner didn't request the certificate of compliance, but I submitted a plan showing the work within the 100-foot buffer zone and summarized it in a letter. And there's a few minor differences. As I said, the contour elevation 180 7 is slightly different than what was on the proposed plan. It's very slight.
What was on the proposed plan?
It was just a little different location of the proposed contour of 187. Minor grading change.
Bob, just refresh our minds up here. It's 85 Parkwood. The lot is number 67.
Right.
Everything is 67. This was a
85
subdivision?
85 is the house number.
85 is the house number, the lot number is 67. Okay.
Right. The two plans, the initial plan was dated March 29, 2000, with an earlier building footprint. Then that was revised for the, what was actually constructed, and it was dated October 16th, 2000. Both were labeled Lot 67 Parkwood Drive. Those are the lot numbers that were on the subdivision plan. That plan was revised in December 15th, 2000, and 4th of January 2001. So,
I'm having a hard time reading it because some of the numbers are blurred on the map that I've got. And I'm looking at your final revision of January 4th, 2001. And can you point out where the differences are in the 187 elevation?
the existing 187 elevation goes from the, just to the right of the patio and out to the property line, whereas on the proposed, it is actually a little bit tighter to the house, and then cuts in. So, I mean, it's a minimal change in the,
But what's the change, though? I know you said minimal, but I have no idea if you're talking about 6 inches or 6
yeah,
feet.
it's in the range of 6 inches, yeah. Right. And most of that is, you know, in the outer limits of the 100-foot buffer zone. I think the main point that I tried to reflect on the plans is the grading that was shown on the proposed plan was actually replaced with a low-rise landscape wall to the left of the patio, and that actually limited the, minimized the amount of disturbance. And I don't know if there was any photographs submitted by the
Yeah, right.
homeowners, but this shows the area that is,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
there's really the non-disturbed area and the wetlands area and the non-disturbed area out the back corner here,
Where is it about?
out here, out in this back corner.
Where's
right?
this on the map? Where
It's
is it?
right here. It's coming from the back steps through this, what I call the water fountain, out towards to the rear corner here. And you can see that just short of that large tree is the beginning of, actually on the second photograph, you can see that low-rise wall. And most everything beyond that is untouched. And that's the wall. That's the wall right here. So most everything beyond that wall is untouched, and it's about 12 to 17 feet from the 25-foot non-disturb zone.
Could you remind me, in this photograph, what that looks like a foundation there? Do you know what that is on the site?
It's,
Just right.
yeah, it's a bunch of, it's about this much in diameter. It's concrete blocks. I don't believe I showed it on the proposed, but it was there. I remember seeing it.
Like an old shed foundation or something like that, or?
Actually, it's circular. I don't think it's a shed foundation. I don't know what it was. But as I recall, it was there at the time.
So the changes, like this fountain area. Am I correct, that does not exist on the plan that was approved?
Right, yeah. And as it turns out, I was told that it's not a fountain, it's more like a bird bath type of a arrangement. There's no fountain involved.
I don't know about
That's quite a bird.
an ostrich.
Big bird.
Maybe an ostrich. How about a sidewalk? We could look at this.
Yeah, I think so.
I think we need to look at it.
'Cause I'm
I'm not
going-
sure this is undisturbed.
And I'm going back to, it looks like the original plan, the corner of the house, I'm really stumped as to,
Which plan was that? Was that the,
I'm looking first at
March
the...
29th?
March 29th of 2000.
that really is of no significance, because that was superseded by the plan dated October 16th, 2000. I don't know, I included it in the package for this evening because it was mentioned in the order of conditions. It really
But you're
has-
going from 185 to 187.
It really has no relevance to what was actually proposed, the final plan that was proposed, the second plan, the large plan that you have. But I just probably shouldn't have included it, but I included it because it was mentioned in
But
the,
how did we get from 185 to 187? That's really what my question is.
what?
I mean, if the grading is changed, and you're saying it's just 6 inches off the 187, I'm starting from 185. That's my question. How do you get from 185 to 187 to 187.5?
Where's the 185?
On the plan, March 29th, 2000, it says 185.
No, that,
And then it goes to 187. And then it stays
order-
at 187.
the order of conditions was based on the plan dated October 16th, 2000, which was revised twice. That's the plan. You can see there's a considerable difference between the initially proposed house and the one that was actually built, that's shown on that October 16th plan. So probably shouldn't have confused the issue by enclosing that plan.
Well, I'm not confused. I'm just trying to figure out how the elevation is changing, because I've got on your later plan, limit of 5 feet, remove and replace area if required. I'm just trying to figure out, and we were talking about a ton of fill. And it may be perfectly
No.
legit.
What's the note?
Well, this one
No,
here.
that's for the leaching system, okay? That's well beyond the 100-foot buffer. And when there's material that's unsuitable in an area where you're gonna do a leaching system, 5 feet around, you remove and replace that. So that really has no relevance to that. That's the leaching system, there's a septic tank that's beyond the 100-foot buffer.
But the 187 is running all the way around the house,
Yeah, but the one-
into our
all right,
jurisdiction,
the-
right?
The 187 is here, okay? And the, where's the as-built?
Is that it?
You don't have a third, you don't have the other plan? The 187 is here. On the proposed plan, it came around this way, and right on the as-built, it comes to here. So, there's probably 6 inches in the difference.
Is there a correlation, is there anything on the as-built plan that correlates to the stone wall? I like the idea of the stone wall and the fact that
Right.
you've maintained all of the contours going into it, but there's no correlation for me
On-
to understand
no, on
that
the-
relative to this.
On the proposed, you can notice a line that's X and
Yep,
dash.
yep.
That was a limit of work line.
And that's the same as the dash line on this?
Essentially, yeah, right.
Okay.
It may vary a couple of feet here and there, but essentially that's it. And as you can see from the photos, there was no work done beyond that.
Right. Okay.
And I think that's the main thing. And it's, it's 12 to 18 feet beyond,
Yeah.
beyond.
Slightly.
All of these contours are being We run into there. Basically, what they've done is they put in a, they put in a retaining wall here, which brought this whole backside up to 180, 185, 184. 185, which is that, 184. Yeah, so it's all, so what I see is that the retaining wall that they put in here,
Yeah.
just let them bring this soil here up to 185, pretty much across the majority of the back.
187?
No, well, it's 187 over here, but it's 185, that's 187 all the way out to there. So that rather than coming across the back with 187, that area is up, where here it was 187 all the way back to there, and it was 185 up here. So 186 is somewhere in the middle. So it's 186, but in terms of
Or it may
this...
stay as 185 up to the retaining wall.
Right. It let them level out this zone behind the retaining wall and not do any more work. You know, it's, the contours on either side of that retaining wall line are consistent with, the contours on the unaffected side are consistent.
Gotcha.
As you'll see, if you decide to go out there, that, in my opinion, this is a classic case of non-disturbance. Not only in the 25-foot non-disturb zone, but upland of that. And it's just whatever's below the retaining wall.
And the water fountain or bird bath or whatever it is, that's got a pump. It looks like there's some kind of a nozzle on the outside in the picture.
I think that was a light,
A light?
yeah.
Well, they do have a circulator of some kind, right?
I have no idea.
It looks like it's a
I
koi
just
pond.
located-
I think it's a fish pond.
I
It's a fish pond.
assumed it was a fountain. I located it, showed it on the plan, because it exists.
To me, the question is whether or not the modification that was made should have been reviewed. I mean, it looks significant relative to what was originally proposed in terms of the patio and the pond and the retaining, I mean, the three elements, the patio, the pond, and the retaining wall. I don't think that the impact to the site is significantly different than what was proposed because of the retaining wall. The fact that they had the retaining wall kept it all out of area, it kept the area that they were affecting is still the area that they affected. They resolved the contours into the retaining wall.
Yeah, I'm not saying we would not have approved it.
I'm not either.
But
But
I'm
I'd
not
like-
sure it's a minor
I'd like to
revision.
know how deep the pond is. If they dug this after the fact, it's not,
Right.
you know.
Yep.
So why don't we take a look at it?
Let's look at it.
February 6th, all right?
I'm sorry?
February 6th? What time are you going out on the 6th?
8 o'clock.
And how long will you be there?
I'm not sure that we should do it in that order.
Okay?
And I think that we should wait and let that other one, because I think that's going to be a longer issue and potentially longer site walk. We ought to wait and see how it plays out and then notify people, if
Okay.
people are amenable to that.
Do you want to begin here instead? And
Yeah, I don't know what else is going to come for other site walks, but my feeling is that if that one runs long, it basically messes everybody up.
That's
Where
true.
if we do smaller ones beforehand and finish out with that one, that might be more amenable to.
And it's
Okay.
always more than less.
It's always more than less, yes.
well, why don't we say we'll go here then at 8 to start off?
Yeah,
It's a small one, hopefully.
All
I
right,
was just
we'll meet
saying
you
that
there.
the other, we don't want to,
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right.
thank you.
Any questions, comments from abutters, members of the public? Hearing nothing, well, with your assent, we'll adjourn this until February 6th,
very much.
8 a.m. Thank you. Next on the agenda is notice of intent 693-711 Randolph Avenue, continued hearing.
It feels like in 2 weeks, I'm going to mail This is late.
Good afternoon, Jim. Can you
Sure.
identify yourself
All
for the
set?
magical record? And
Yep, Jim Burke, to Sell Burke and Associates here, representing HGMW Randolph Avenue LLC, and who's proposing a project at 711 Randolph Ave, a 40B, called H&W Apartments. we just scheduled this meeting to kind of give you an update. We're at the HAC. A lot of motions in front of them right now, and they're going through those. They haven't scheduled a hearing yet, and it looks as though we probably won't have a hearing scheduled, I'm told, till the summer.
Really?
That's the rumor. And so I'm here tonight really to ask for an additional extension. And I have a letter.
All right. And I'm sure there may be some questions, but
Sure.
I have one that is really minor. But we had asked for a, people call it peer review, but it's a peer review in a different sense than the ZBA uses
Right.
it. I'm going to mess up this statute, but I believe it's Chapter 44, Section 53G, that allows us to have the applicant pay for a consultant for us. So it's a consultant versus a peer review. I don't know what the peer review rules and regs are for the ZBA, but I do know what, and forgive me if I've got the wrong statute, I think it's 4453G.
I trust you.
And the only condition precedent in that statute is that we have to have a regulation that allows us to do this, which we do.
Right.
So we very often ask the applicant to pay for somebody that can assist us in our determination. And this is a case in which we had asked Matt Byrne to go out and do an analysis of a vernal pool potential. He came back and said, there is none.
Right.
And it's a small issue, but we don't have a budget to retain him, and the obligation under 4453G is for the applicant to pay. And I've got an email here saying that we have to pay, and it would be, we don't have any money.
Right.
Sorry.
And, and I talked to my client about it, probably a month ago or longer, trying to find a resolution to this particular issue. I wasn't able to get a hold of him today. And the amount is,
I think it's $350.
it's not a lot of money, and I think everything's it's a principle thing that is going on, and
You make
it's
this
something.
go away, Jim.
It's not my principle, okay? So the thing is that I'll work on it to get it done. I think what I probably can do is maybe I can pay it, and then you can pay me in my vast array of invoices towards them. So we'll
You'd hit that deep pocket of yours.
But, I was trying to get a hold of him today to talk about it, was not able to. But it's something that I will definitely put on my agenda to get it solved within the month.
Good. All right, thanks. Now, do you want to kick it over to a particular date, or?
I think my letter says at the first meeting in May 6th?
10th.
10th, I was close.
Are there any questions? Abutters, members of the public that have a comment or a question? Hearing none?
One thing, if I'm going to submit a letter that went to Rachel Freed at DEP asking for an extension of the SORAD, so just for your records.
Jim, I just actually had one question.
Sure.
The litigation right now, just so the public knows, is the applicants and is it the abutters? Is it a group of people?
No, it's
What-
the applicant appealed the decision of the ZBA to the HAC. And there are a significant amount of motions that came across on both sides with regards to the 65 conditions from the ZBA's decision. So they're going through, my understanding is that they're just going through all the motions, trying to figure out, okay, what are we going to review? And once they establish that, they're going to schedule the hearing.
Thank you.
That's good. I guess that's it. Thank you very much, Jim. May
Thank you.
10th?
See you in May.
Hey, all right, good enough. Thank you. Next on the agenda is Enforcement Order 1131 Randolph Avenue and Hillside Street. Is there anybody that's appearing on that? I think we did get a letter, and for the public's benefit, this is an enforcement order for alterations in the wetlands, and it actually is on Copeland property. And we did, before issuing the enforcement order, did talk to the Copeland trustees. And once again, I'll take this opportunity publicly to thank the Copeland Foundation for all they've done for the town. Nevertheless, this is some alteration of the wetlands without permission. it was done by someone other than the Copeland Foundation, and I think Kathy spoke to the folks at Bunny Thomas's company, and they have an explanation, I guess, but in the meantime, we asked them to come in here to give us the explanation, but they're actually shut down for the winter, so they've asked to continue that, but in the meantime, they've agreed to do no further alteration of the wetland. So we've basically frozen the scene, which is appropriate given the weather. We will, did they give you a date as to when they could come in and give an explanation?
They just said that April.
April. Well, as long as nothing changes, I'm okay with an April continuance. Anybody else?
Fine.
Do you not want to talk about anything right now? You would want
No.
to table the whole thing
No.
until April? Okay, so when I went and did a site walk, and basically citing a line from where they excavated, where they were basically removing trees that they had planted that were no longer saleable, is my understanding. So
Now,
they
is
were-
this on the hillside section?
No, this
Michael?
is on the plant, between the back of the Pepsi plant and the houses where we had, the address, I don't remember, we just looked at the pool that they were installing,
Yes,
The 108?
yes,
on
Hillside?
Hillside, yes.
right, right.
Between that and the back of the Pepsi plant, there's a field that's when you look at from the back of the house, you look at the Pepsi plant, the field to the left, as you look that way, is used for planting, for trees and for maintenance that they're going to harvest and sell. The area from that to the right is wetland. And the issue is that when they were scrubbing trees, I assume to make
What do you
more...
mean scrubbing?
removing trees that were no longer saleable, is what I understood they were doing. They were trying to expand the amount of area that was previously planted to open it up for additional planting of more saleable trees. That's what I understand, or plantings.
New plantings.
New plantings,
But
right.
why wouldn't they let the old ones continue to grow?
Well, they need the room. They're gonna, if it's not saleable, then they'll scrub it, and then,
Not saleable because it's too big?
well, I don't know why. I don't know, for some reason or other, they
Might have died.
decided that the plants weren't saleable and they were taking up space, so they removed them.
Does it appear to be within our jurisdiction?
Yeah, that's where I was going. So when you stand at the back of the house and you look from the corner of the house at the Pepsi plant, I was able to cite a line that aligned with the extent of what they had excavated or removed, the plantings. And when you overlay that line with the GIS plan, it's pretty much dead on with the edge of the wetland. So in reality, the accuracy of the GIS plan, if, depending on where that is, they were either in or almost in the wetland. They were definitely within the
25,
non-disturbance
yeah.
zone. And it really, I think where we're going with this is, well, let's ask for a delineation of the wetland along there. We'll flag the 25-foot non-disturbance in, because they are using the site for productive farming, the farming plants, kind of landscaping plants. And I'm not personally opposed. I mean, that's appropriate. I think once we've defined a line, it'll resolve the issue. But we just need to. It's not clear when you're on the site where that line is, and they just were pushing the envelope in terms of the amount of land that they could use for planting for
Yeah.
growing stock.
What about the previous enforcement order we had at the parking lot?
Totally different place, different issue.
Because part of that was delineated. I can't remember how far the delineation went.
It didn't go this far.
Didn't go.
I don't believe it, no. That was the far side off to the right, and you're looking at the near side, which would be the left-hand edge of that same wetland. I don't think
Okay.
the delineation went this far. It wouldn't have had to at that time, because that's the other side of the wetland.
All right, now we can address this later, but this sounds like a situation where we're going to need to engage a consultant to have it delineated.
Correct. That's why I wanted to talk about it now, was to say that I believe that the resolution of this is more an issue of delineation and kind of providing a 25-foot line with some kind of
Everyone's
markers.
best interest to do
And
it.
then everyone knows where it is,
Yeah.
and it resolves the issue going forward, as opposed to right now where it's not delineated and they may have inadvertently crossed, kind of expanded beyond what we would find to be appropriate.
Kathy, do you want to put out, I don't know how you do this, if you have like a request for proposal, or do you just call Steve Ivas and Lenore White and We've had others, too, that we've invited, and I don't want to limit the list
No,
of people that we could ask. There should be some kind of a generic
We've
request
said
for
this so many
proposal that goes out.
times. I know, we should have that list.
Do you want to have the Copeland family, if they prefer to delineate the land on their own?
They certainly can.
Well, just because it's like a third party to where they're the property owners.
Yeah, they would not be a third, but we're looking for some independent.
No,
Entity to do it.
what she's proposing, I believe, is saying that this is what we want, what we believe is going to need to be done, and asking them if they want to have it done by someone
their
of their...
people.
By their people, by
Yeah.
their own choice.
That's true, and I understand that, and I understood it, but when we went through this, when they expanded the parking lot, and it wasn't the Copelands that expanded the parking lot, it was Town Tree.
Right.
But when we did that, the same situation happened. They had their own consultants, and we said, no, we want ours.
Okay.
Because, and unfortunately, the Copelands were brought into that situation. It was the tenant that was actually expanding, as I understand.
Exactly the same situation here.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's why, at this juncture, I'm not sure whether it would be the Copelands engaging somebody or if it would be Bunny Thomas. And I suspect it's going to be Bunny Thomas, because the Copelands didn't do anything.
Right.
And Thomas is using it, so I suspect he would come in, and I would prefer to have our own consultants. That's exactly what we did before. Different players. I agree. But it's the same scenario.
So let's just pull the trigger on it and getting
Okay, either one.
getting our own consultant involved.
Correct, right.
I think it's the advantage of both of those parties to have us have it done.
Yes. Right, I agree.
Who did the other edge of that wetland? Was it Steve Ibis? Who came in?
Yes, it
behind-
was Steve
It
Ibis.
was, yeah.
It was. It was. All right, so, and again, we have to be careful. Ned,
I think I was involved with Ned Corcoran. I was involved on behalf of Copeland.
Yes,
The last
sure.
time. I think Copeland's engaged Steve Ibis.
we did, they paid. But
Yes.
that's that same chapter 44, and I may be screwing up the numbers. I think it's 44, section 53G that we use
My
repeatedly.
recollection is that we talked to Ibis and Fort Hill Associates, and Ibis was retained, I think, probably on behalf of the town, but paid by,
Correct.
I know it was definitely paid by
That is correct.
Yeah.
the Copelands.
Right, and that's what we're trying to do again. I just don't want to continually go back to Steve. I have great respect for Steve Ibis, but I just want to make sure, because it's a public body, that we put it out to the public so that anyone can bid for the job. But, thank you for that, because that comports with my memory, our memory as well. Thanks. So Kathy, can you do, spread the word, so to speak, and see if we can get other people to...
What you actually just want is a request for delineation of.
Correct. That's it.
Right.
Okay.
Including a meeting and probably a site walk.
Yeah, I agree.
Correct.
After the delineation.
Right.
Correct. We'll want to see the line and check the line. All right, so that they've asked for April, but if you can get that out, I'm sure we can get somebody, maybe we could take a look at the bids by March anyway.
Okay.
And then we'll have enough time to meet them to find out, well, it's
We
probably going to take
shouldn't pull
that
the
time
trigger on
anyway.
that until we meet with them, right? I mean, we can line it up. We shouldn't, I don't think we should jump the gun in terms of, I mean, we have, I have a recommended strategy that I said. I'm not sure that we should pull the trigger on that until we've met with either the Copelands or
Bunny Thomas.
Bunny.
I think that's fair. But to have the proposals in by March is
proposals, yeah,
different.
definitely.
Or any time prior to the April meeting.
Right.
It's just so we have it.
Yeah, we have them, and we can talk about it on the spot.
I think March would be
Right.
smart.
I agree.
People will be right on it.
Right, so if we get the bids in March, we'll be ready to discuss it with the Copeland / Thomas Company.
Right.
All right, everybody in agreement?
Sounds good.
All right, so that's off until you get the request for proposals out, Kathy, and then we'll receive those in March, and we'll see I guess, Bunny Thomas or his representative in April.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Next on the agenda is informational. This is 487 Blue Hill Parkway. Mr. Corcoran?
Good evening. Mind if I move up here?
That's perfect.
Closer with your plans. Ned Corcoran here on behalf of the McKean family. I'm joined by Pat McKean, who is one of the three brothers who owns the property in a trust at 487 Blue Hills Parkway, and we have been engaged on an interesting and somewhat long process to secure hopefully new zoning for the property and then new development to follow. So I put in a memo with a series of aerial photos and plans. I thought I'd take a quick walk through, sort of look at the area, and then I'm going to hand around while I do that a survey of Pope's Pond as of 1925, when it was fully online as an ice production business. And you can see in the survey with Blue Hills Parkway at the bottom, 2 large ice houses, each about an acre in size. And the size...
I think the Parkway is one of the first in the Commonwealth. I think about 1910. Do you know one way or the other? That's my memory. Yeah, I think it's one of the first ones in the state, the Parkway concept.
Yeah, and it's in the Parkway fronts the property, and the Conservation Commission and Pope's Pond Conservation Area is the rear abutter to the property. The town also owns, and I think it's placed under the...
It's a nice package, by the way.
Thank you.
The whole thing stands really
That's
well.
very good.
Yeah.
So
Very helpful.
part of what I do, it's very interesting because this aerial photo really shows what I call sort of the hole in the donut. Milton, in some ways, is a hole in the donut for the lack of basic services and amenities in town. We've made conscious decisions as a town over time to do it. But, you know, you've got this significant density of residential housing that surrounds the high school in the Pope's Pond Conservation Area, and there are no shopping amenities, significant shopping amenities available to them. I think we were here about a year ago, and we were talking about the possibility of some sort of a residential redevelopment. At the time, the McKeans were thinking about doing something similar to what we had permitted up at Brush Hill Road for 40 townhouse units at the old St. Pius Rectory site. There were no wetlands there, so we never came before this body, but town meeting did approve rezoning last year for that project. And we started some discussions around the notion of residential here, and we heard from a lot of people who live proximate to the area to say, we don't need any more residential. What we really want is a market and some other meeting and gathering space. And we thought that there was a really great opportunity to sort of clean up and engage the rear of the property, in particular with the conservation area, in a way, obviously, that would want to pay careful attention to your needs, desires, et cetera, as to how that could be planned and developed. So this, obviously, the aerial shows the parkway running straight up and down the middle. The Pope's Pond, as it's currently configured, you can see from that 1925 survey that it was substantially larger. We think they dammed up the entry to Pine Tree Brook, took advantage of shallower area to freeze quickly, and they pulled ice out of it year-round. They did it for about 75 years. They pulled ice out of Pope's Pond from sometime in the 1860s, 70s, until 1954, when it was sold to an architect named Rugo, and he was there for approximately 30 years, and then the McKean family bought the property in 1983, and they used it for their oil and heating business. So it has been a pre-existing, non-conforming business use in a part of town that was eventually zoned as Residence B, 20,000 square foot lots. And I think Rugo developed, or at least created the subdivision for the lots that front, the residential lots that front on the parkway as you head south from this lot. This is the last lot north on the parkway before you get to the Pope's Pond Conservation Area. The next a couple of areas, so sort of existing conditions. The first,
Related to that, who owns Lot 3? On the next map, the map that you have right there? Do you know offhand?
who owns
Lot 3
that square? The town owns the land, but it was deeded to the town for conservation
purposes?
purposes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
The Conservation Commission owns on
Oh,
behalf of
back.
the town.
I'm
everything
sorry,
in the
Arthur,
back.
I didn't actually get your question. What was your
There's
question?
there's a difference in 3A and 3.
You see Lot
Just
3,
wanted to
just to the
Okay.
north.
Clarify
Yes.
that so that everybody understood.
That was purchased by the town from the Lamb Estate. It was purchased by on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, but the deed refers specifically to conservation purposes. And whenever the town took title to 3 and 3A, the little bit of asphalt driveway that pre-existed sort of came with it. I don't think the boat is any longer on that property, but, and so this is the blue, the light blue is the 300-foot abutter line from the property. So the four residential abutters, the high school, conservation land across the street, and then Home Inc. Is across the street. The next is a sort of more of a close-up of the property. So if you have it with Town of Milton on the top, the parkway's on the right. And that shows sort of mostly existing conditions. The only condition that is different generally from what you see here is the fact that the swimming pool has been filled. That's no longer there. This was, I copied this, downloaded this in December of 2014, but I think this is from a 2012 GIS aerial that's on the town's website. The next shows the draft of a proposed site plan that would support a market, perhaps a cafe, a small bank, and some offices. And so
Where Blue Hill Avenue is, I'm
Oh, if
sorry,
you
Blue Hill
hold it-
Parkway is to the right?
Parkway is to the right. The conservation area in Post Pond is to the left. If you go back to the,
Just on this plan, the proposed site condition for the back third, or rather quarter or less of the site is just
clean it up and green it.
clean it up and green it.
So the idea is that there's really two very important areas of green space that need to be conserved, need to be enhanced. And one is the front of the property on the parkway. There's a stand of beautiful stately trees, some red oaks and some pines, and a big green lawn that fronts on the parkway. And then separately, although currently not very good shape, but the notion of connecting to the conservation resource area in the back. This shows a path that might meander up from the crossing of the bridge right at the entrance to the point where Pope's Pond flows into the brook.
Right.
And currently, the path sort of follows the brook northeasterly out to the parkway. We're thinking in terms of bringing a pathway up to the rear of the property and providing some access for people who might come and could park here. Right now, it's just sort of diagrammed in as the location's not specific to anything it really want to be planned. What we do know is that there is a water line that runs along the northeasterly boundary of the property, straight down through the wetland, across the other side, and it serves people on the west side of Pope's Pond. There's an easement, I think the town owns the easement for that. Probably would want to just bring the pathway up over the top of that. And then
Where do the kids generally walk to school now?
they come over, Generally, if you go back to the aerial, cross over here at the north end of the post pond, as the path comes across from this neighborhood, and there's a footbridge over the pond, and then they turn along the brook.
To the parkway.
And it follows the brook.
Follows the brook, and they cross out here, and then generally they they find their way in however they will. This
There's a
would
bridge
provide-
up there, isn't there? But
Yeah, there's some, I think there are some bridges here, but
Yeah.
in terms of how they get in and up to the high school, they either come back to Guile
different
Road and up,
paths.
or they follow different paths in and over. It's sort of a diagonal way of getting there. One of the things that we think this would do is it would provide a more direct access in, across the property, and across
Oh, nice.
Blue Hill Avenue to the bottom of Guile Road.
really nice.
Probably be a safer.
So you are trying to funnel, like, on this last, second to last page, the diagram with this one, this pathway, access pathway, is that designed to funnel the kids from the
Yeah.
other neighborhoods through?
That hasn't been designed anything other to show that it's a possible location of a pathway. We do,
This is a connection you want to make, and,
Right.
yeah, it's,
before we get any further, we're really in concepts at this moment with the notion that one of the benefits, a couple of the benefits about this project is it would open up access to the rear, it would clean up that back of the property. It would provide the opportunity for direct walking access from that large neighborhood across the pond and into where the shopping and other amenities are, and could provide safer access for kids coming across, coming through the property and out across the parkway and at the across from the bottom of Guile Road. So that's
Talking about a traffic light out there?
very unlikely. We're having we've had very preliminary conversations with DCR. It's a DCR Parkway. I'm meeting in the next week or two with their planning and traffic folks, just to have that preliminary conversation. Right now, traffic is right in, right out only. There's no, there's the wide median that runs the length of the parkway from Canton Avenue north to the point where you get almost up to where the Tucker School is. There are some breaks in that median further north where you can cross over, and there are some turnarounds in the middle, but there's nothing, you cannot come out of the bottom of the high school and turn a left, and you can't come out of this property and turn left to go north. We're not, our traffic engineer doesn't think we need to do anything about that.
yeah, I wouldn't think so either.
No.
The last thing you want is people coming out of the school and going left
Right.
across traffic.
The volumes, there
I
are,
was thinking of the kids walking.
Well, just a
that's a
pedestrian
separate,
light or
that's a
something.
This is
separate
separate issue, I know that.
question
Yeah.
that I have begun to raise with them, is with the notion of pedestrian crossing.
Yeah,
They are loath to break that access. If you do it, you've got to do it with signal activate. You have to have a signal, and you'll have to cut it, because the cut will have to be handicapped accessible. Once you do it, you got to make it handicapped accessible. You've got 2 lanes. On the northbound side, you've got 2 lanes plus a bike lane plus a breakdown parking lane. And on the southbound side, you've got 2 lanes. So if you're going to cross, you've got to cross one piece, stop, wait for the light to activate again, and then cross again. People at Home Inc. would like to see that, because there's a lot of them who would like to walk down the hill, across the street, and in. Teachers from the high school, others who might be coming to, either from out of town or from in town, who have dropping kids for Saturday and Sunday athletic events, could park, walk down and across the street. A lot of reasons why pedestrian traffic would cross. And so one of the issues is whether DCR would want to allow that type of a signal, and if so, how would we design it and manage it? One of the benefits, I think, is that it would tend to slow traffic down It'd act as a traffic.
Hang on a second.
So one of the benefits, I think, would be that, right now, because it's 2 lanes in each direction, it's dead flat and it's dead straight. Traffic picks up speed pretty well. If there were even the notion of a light that could be activated from a pedestrian perspective, might tend to slow people down. It's interesting, one of the histories that we did find out about the Parkway is that the reason why the northbound side is much wider than the southbound side is that they used to have carriage races on the southbound side. And on Sundays, they would move all of the vehicular traffic to the northbound side, and they would have a lane going south and a lane going north with enough width in the middle to separate them. So it's sort of one of the interesting pieces of history of the Parkway. It's a beautiful stretch of road, but there are, as I say, there's very, very high volume of traffic on the road. It's 41 to 49,000 average annual daily trips, depending on which set of numbers you look at. Most of that is cutting through Milton.
Well,
That means
the
that-
reason I was asking, and traffic is not our
Yeah.
area, but if you go back to the pathway, and I do support your whole concept of providing public access to the resource area, but my next question, after I ask you about that brown line, if that's going to actually direct the kids that are normally going this way, and kind of, it's like a level spreader, the kids kind of spread out a little bit when they cross the parkway. If you funnel them into your area and they all cross as a group, you've got some issues there if you're directing them in that area. Because I support the public access, I think it's a great idea. But if you're also encouraging, basically bringing the kids together that are crossing the street, you get a lot of people crossing the street, and it is busy.
Yeah, you'll have small groups constantly going across, yeah. Yeah, and they do it, you're right, there's a bit of a spreader, something we'd have to evaluate. And that's an issue, I think, that's always going to be an issue for DCR. All it's going to take is for one kid to stumble at the wrong time when a car is coming, and you have an accident, and all of a sudden, why are you allowing kids to cross without some form of protected crossing?
I don't believe there's any protective crossing in that zone currently. So you're not talking about a greater number of students, and anything you do is going to be better than what's there now, which is they're basically flowing across the road in the middle of it's not a high-speed length, but they're 30 miles an hour plus along that length. So I can't, I'm, once again, not a traffic person, but anything that introduces an opportunity to control the traffic is probably better than what there is now.
Well, I think this sounds like, it's a great concept. I've walked Pope's Pond maybe 3 or 4 times in all the years I've lived here, and each time I think to myself, there's nobody here, there's nobody using this beautiful area, myself and my companions. So it would be wonderful to open it up to the public to see. It's a jewel in the middle of town, so to get access and to treat it carefully and do it properly, it sounds very exciting.
So a couple of things that we sort of, I guess, where are we and where are we headed, and a couple of things for the commission to really think about before we come back and start thinking more in a detailed way about the site planning. We're going before town meeting, February 8th, for a zoning overlay to allow this mix of business and open space. 30% of the lot has to be dedicated to usable open space. It's a combination of building density, parking, and open space, and to meet all of that. We are hopeful of a positive vote. We think we're going to have a positive recommendation from the planning board and the warrant committee, and we're hopeful for a positive outcome at town meeting. If it passes town meeting, then we get really serious about the notion of who are the end users, what's the real development scheme going to look like. The zoning speaks to this draft of the site plan. It's got some flexibility because it needs some flexibility, but it's really the notion of replacing two large buildings with two large buildings, essentially in their same, not quite in their same footprints,
The same scale.
the same scale. And so the big, wide building that is parallel to the Parkway would be the market and perhaps other commercial uses. The building that's perpendicular would actually be much smaller. It would be a small bank building with some offices on the second floor. And we're finding that things like Blue Hills Bank and a couple of other these small neighborhood banks really want their flag in the ground. They want to have a piece of real estate. People see them, they drive by, they do very little banking in the building, but they want that flag and that presence. So we think about 16 to 17,000 square feet of built area, occupied space, 65 to 70 parking spaces, 30% open space. Those all have to kind of fit together. If we secure the zoning, as I said, McKean family will be off and running to secure that anchor food tenant. And we're talking to a number, but no one's ready to commit until they know there's something real. From there, we'll start the real site planning. One of the issues is going to be designing stormwater and how to manage stormwater with respect to the fact that it's surrounded on two sides by conservation land. We don't directly abut wetland area, but there is wetlands substantially on that Lot 3. This is sort of it's the wetland overlay of the GIS map. You can see the wetlands, and then obviously the Pope's Pond area itself. So managing and designing stormwater so that that's done properly. Designing the treatment for that edge of property. If you look again at the site plan, we had to draw one boundary where we were going to be not set back. So the residential abutters are to the south, the Pope's Pond is to the west, the conservation, the green area and the parkway is to the east. The give, we think, had to be on that northerly side. We are somewhat set back from the wetlands on Lot 3, but we do want to treat that edge properly, so that despite the fact that we're showing parking, that parking really disappears will want to disappear from the next door neighbor. So whether it's berms and fencing and shrubs, we'll want to treat that as best we can. And so if there are any specific issues or concerns that you guys think about, that would be helpful to know. We do have to have room. We're assuming that this northerly end of that market building will be where the service activity happens. We do need room for trucks to back up and in and out. Dumpsters will be placed reasonably on the site and have to be changed out at least 2 or 3 times a week. So that activity has to be done reasonably. We want to keep that activity as far away as we can from the abutting property. So there's some flexibility in this, but we are, paying attention to that residential abutter, really paying attention to what we do as we engage directly with the conservation area next door and how we present the property to the excuse me, to the parkway, which is a park, part of the park system. So,
What's the area behind the residential units on the, I guess that's the south side? Between those, I'm looking at this one. The last sheet.
okay.
That area is all town land, is that correct?
That area is all part of the Pope's Pond Conservation Area. If you come all the way down to the, heading south, behind these,
Houses, yeah.
that's all part of the Pope's Pond Conservation Area. That's under your jurisdiction.
That's the whole
Jurisdiction.
3A area seen earlier on an earlier map.
Right, no, I understand it's conservation area, but it's deeded
I
to
think
the
it is.
town,
I think it's-
Conservation Commission,
I think it is, yeah.
one or both?
I think it's deeded to the I think this square, Lot 3, is deeded to the
Town.
town.
Okay.
I think the rest of it is deeded to the Conservation Commission.
Okay. 'Cause remember, this is a little bit off subject,
Except for the Guy Road.
it goes up to, no, Guy Road's on the other side.
Right,
It
but
goes
the
up to
same
Canton
question.
Avenue.
Yeah.
Because I think it actually opens into Canton Avenue, but
It does.
you never know it.
Yes, it's all overgrown, but it does.
All right. Now, I'm just thinking of, public access and, whether or not we would have an opportunity to improve that whole land between the houses and the Pope's Pond.
You're thinking about a path around the pond. That'd be wonderful.
Almost do it like a Turner's Pond.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Yeah.
And they have a bridge at the end to get you without actually getting all the way
There
to Canton.
there is a path to there now, it's just overgrown.
So,
Right, yeah.
So making something viable. So in looking at this plan, just in measuring with the scale, the site, the nearest corner of the site to Pope's Pond looks like it's about a little under 90 feet. And then what you're proposing now, the pavement is about 180 feet off of the pond. Your intent is to keep the back portion of the site open and let it go back to green, and the kind of the lot coverage that you're looking at here is where, understanding that you might massage it a little, but this is what we can expect to see eventually. I mean, in terms of the relationship of the building, of the lot coverage and the layout of the plan?
Yes, we're suggesting, even in the zoning, that the buildings would be set back from the parkway, the main building would be set back 150 feet from the parkway and a minimum of 90 feet from the rear lot line. So,
What you have drawn here is, based on the scale that's on the drawing, is more like the main body build's 180 feet back. Just
this-
using the scale.
this from here to there?
No, from the street, no.
The street.
From the parkway side.
Yeah, I think it does.
That's about 180 feet.
Yeah, we're allowing for a little bit of play, but we're saying minimum setback of building will be 150 feet from the front and 90 feet from the back.
Okay.
Parking areas will be a minimum of 60 feet,
Okay.
and, yeah, it's 60 feet in. It's actually going to be, could be more like 80. But
Yeah.
we're playing with the, this building could widen
Yep.
depending on the tenant needs.
I just want to make sure that you're not thinking that this eventually is all shifting to the back to allow you more room up front for either for more retail or other things.
No.
The
Very-
intent is to keep it in a balanced zone in the center with some green on
Exactly.
the front and the balance of the green on the rear.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the two main green areas, one front, one back, are significant components of this site plan.
Along the north edge, you're not 25 feet, based on the GIS plan, understanding there's some variation in that. The closest it looks like is 40 feet from the edge of the wetland to the property line. So I think the biggest concern along that side is really just controlling runoff.
Right.
A curb. I don't think you're really talking about anything bigger than a curb, and kind of controlled snow removal.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. We do provide in the bylaw, we have to have a place for snow
Yeah.
storage.
But
And
none of
that's-
that, I don't think any of that's prohibitive. Yeah.
Okay.
Right, that's not insurmountable, but
Right.
you know all the problems we've had for the last 50 years at the Yulin Rink, and what do they do with the snow?
Oh, yeah.
So it is a sensitive area.
And those are, those types of things you're not used to thinking about all the time, and so it's important to hear that early so that the site planning gets done and accounts for that
Right.
early.
One of the things that jumped out of my mind was the idea that there's parking behind the building and whether there was a police concern with that.
It's mostly employee.
Yeah, but
parking
there's
back there.
and if the building's
At
not
night.
at night, if at night there's a place for parking, and is there a police concern with parking behind the building?
I suppose that's
That's beyond
possible.
us.
That's beyond us.
That's beyond
But that's just, do they have a concern?
That's possible.
But the whole public safety it's not within a jurisdiction
Right.
necessarily. But it's a good issue because I think you'll have to address it with the folks next door, especially if they think that, there's access coming up to their back. And I'm sure that's a a sensitive topic to them.
Yeah, it is the Parkway. There is a lot of through traffic, as you say, so.
All right, any other questions, comments? Any members of the public about us? Yes, sir. Come forward and introduce yourself, please.
Hello, Lee Toma. I live on Aberdeen Road, and I'm not in a butter, but I am a neighbor, and I'd just like to say that when I do have to go grocery shopping, I have to go all the way to Hyde Park to go get stuff, and it would be a lot more convenient for me selfishly and less environmental impact if I were to be able to just walk the half-mile down the street and pick up groceries there. Also, as a member of the Bicycle Advisory Committee, I'd like to speak up in support of connecting the trail to the Pine Tree Brook path. I think it's a fantastic idea. Many children, as you mentioned, already use the path to get to school, both the middle school and the high school. And I even know someone who uses the trail to commute to work on a bicycle in Boston. So it's a great connection, and I hope that the town can facilitate the connection there. Also,
Are you a town meeting member?
no, I'm not.
You might want to consider going to the town meeting on the 8th?
Yeah.
The 8th or 7th? 8th?
8th.
Right, because your comments there, I think, are appropriate for public consumption.
I
And
hope so,
talking
yeah.
to your town meeting members.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
If he's getting permission to speak.
Right, you'd have to see the moderator first, but
Right.
it's,
Yeah, that's a good point, but thank you. Also, speaking about the crossing on Blue Hills Parkway, we in the bike community have tried working with DCR to get a crossing basically at the Pine Tree Brook path at the bridge there. I think Senator Joyce has allocated potential funding in the transportation bond bill, so there may be an opportunity to do something with that, either at that site or this site. So there may be an opportunity there that we could work with. And also for the bike community, I'd like to see if there's some way to put like a gravel ramp or something up to the Pine Tree Brook bridge there, because it's a pretty steep step, even as shown in your photograph in your presentation. So it would help with accessibility to the new site.
Right, that is a step up onto that
Yeah.
bridge, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And that, I believe, is town property, so I'm not sure how we go about that, but I'd like to see that. Thank you very
that's
much.
good. Thank you for the comments.
Thank
And
Great.
I encourage you to, show up at the town meeting. Thank you.
Well, I guess that would have to be handicap accessible anyway, wouldn't it, eventually? So you couldn't have big steps, you'd have to have a ramp of some
Optimally, yeah.
sort. Yeah, eventually.
I do know that Senator Joyce has been working diligently with the DCR over a long period of time to secure funding for improvements to the parkway. And, one of the things he's talked about is some period lighting, improved sidewalks. Certainly, a component of this project would be participating in that type of nice amenity if and when DCR has the ability to get that moving forward, so.
Lighting on the parkway is good and on the site itself, but not near the pond, not near the streams. That's
No.
a whole other issue for us in terms of
No, not in the rear,
Issue.
not back there. And we talk about dark sky
discouraging light,
compliance with
we
with
see
the
light
lighting.
pollution.
I'm becoming
Okay.
very familiar with
Yes.
the notion of dark sky compliance.
All right, any other thoughts, comments? Ned? Pat, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very,
Thank
very
you.
helpful
Very
to
much.
us. All right,
Nice presentation.
we'll see you at town meeting. Next on the agenda is additional business. Additional business?
If you would consider, I have an as-built plan for 156 Forbes Road. They moved that stone pillar and made the driveway 12 feet wide.
Oh, they moved it?
Huh?
They moved it.
Oh, they didn't move it, I'm sorry, they built the other one, but they kicked everything inside.
It made
So
it
that-
worse.
Well, no, they built the wall that you guys wanted. Yeah. So, Ned's here to represent as well, but I'm just here to really kind of, I don't want to take up your time to discuss it, just want to submit it, and maybe if you want, you could schedule a site walk on the February date.
Sure. Yeah, that would be helpful. I mean, we can't do anything because it's
Right.
not on the agenda, but it's certainly helpful to have those, and I think we could schedule a site walk. Anybody wants to see it on the 6th?
Yeah, let's do it.
But do you need to talk to Michael? I mean, do you have to inform them?
He's aware we're here.
That's
Oh,
Michael.
okay.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be able to
Michael's other
vote.
alter ego.
We'll talk to Michael.
Yeah.
Fixed, but it won't be a vote or anything, it would just be for inspection only.
That's fine. And
And we'll get it back on the
on the
agenda.
hearing on the 9th? Something, wouldn't it?
Correct,
what's-
following Tuesday.
Okay, perfect.
Right, that would be good, that would be good. So you want to be on the
After
agenda on the
after the
9th?
Super Bowl win? Right.
Yes.
Yes,
Well,
exactly.
Win, town meeting, vote.
Which is, excellent, thank you.
All right, thanks.
I have to say one thing, my oldest son jumped out of his first perfectly good airplane today.
That's good. Have you done it?
Oh, he's in airborne training, and he's got 2 jumps tomorrow and 2 on Thursday, and he graduates from airborne on Friday, so I'm flying down.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, yeah.
So,
That's pretty good.
pretty unbelievable. I asked him how he was thinking leading up. I was not sure I would have been able to sleep last night, thinking about that 6 seconds waiting for the parachute to open.
You should do it, you should do it. I know it's a whole lot different in airborne, but you should do the recreational one. It's a
That's fun.
tandem, you do a tandem, but
Yeah, tandem's a blast.
it is
Do
fun,
that with him.
yeah.
So this is military training that he's,
He's in the Army,
and whereabouts is he
Fort
located?
Benning, Georgia.
Oh, excellent.
So December, he graduated from basic training and advanced infantry training, and he was selected for airborne and ranger assessment. So he's doing 3 weeks of airborne, and then sometime later this month, early next month, he'll start ranger. So,
Pretty good.
You got to see 13 Hours about Benghazi. What a movie.
yeah,
Yeah.
so.
Well, congratulations to him and you.
Yes, indeed.
You jumped out, John?
Yeah, a couple of times.
There you go.
That's
No-
fine.
no
Do it
one-
with your son, ask him if he'll just hold you. Otherwise-
Good night, guys, thanks a lot.
Good night.
I don't know if I've been that good a father to him.
Yeah.
We've got some other
Right.
new business, additional business, right?
Well, yes,
Yes.
51 New Park, if you looked over the revised plan and the letter,
I saw that, the letter
did,
from the
yeah.
DPW.
that's fine, I can release all the conditions. We already voted on it. That was just a contingent.
We did vote. What was the vote? It was a contingent vote, wasn't it, that we
I
had
think
approved
these
it
plans.
subject to these
Calculations
plans?
and perk tests.
Yeah.
No letter from DPW,
Right.
Right.
which they did submit.
I did have one question on it, if I can find it.
And I think I had one question too, and because I can't remember the vote. Because they're putting all this extra water directly on that side of the street, did we require some plantings to be done as well to absorb some of that water? No?
No, we did
You
not.
didn't?
We did not. And
There was existing plantings along the drainage trench.
There are, yeah.
But we're
that's true.
pulling it back, though, from
Yeah.
those
Yes,
plantings.
yeah.
But still, there'll be all this extra water that we're
Oh,
adding to the site.
yeah, I actually know what my question was, and it may be apropos of your question or concern. We had the plan to accompany notice of intent prepared by MEC. We received that. The hydro calculations, we received that. The letter from Milton DPW. If you look at the letter from Morse Engineering, it says in the, down near the bottom, second to last bullet, a second leaching pit has been added to the design to increase the capacity, which is all good, and that's what we had discussed. And as I understand it, now there are now 2 leaching pits that when they overtop, they'll essentially be spread out over the land, and that's the only concern that the DPW had that's actually in their letter, is that it has to be graded such that it's not going to go back on the street.
Distributed, yeah.
Distributed. So my question is something that is near and dear to your heart, Arthur, and that is, what about this soil absorption test? And I'm not trying to slow this plan down, but this is the kind of area where we should be looking at whether it's an A soil, a B soil, or a C soil that doesn't absorb very well. Because if it works according to our concept, the overtopping is not going to happen very often, and when it does, it's going to be spread so that it's absorbed into the land and recharged, eventually getting into the brook, which is the way it should work. But we really don't know whether or not that's, A, B, or C soil, if it's
That's
clay,
true.
if it's
That's
going to
true. Yeah.
grade it right. But I'm just wondering, and again, I think we've already voted for this. They did exactly as we asked them. I'm not trying to slow this one down, but it's something that we should be
Yeah.
thinking about.
Right.
If we're going to get, and this is Craig McNaught's, request that we consider
Right.
some kind of a soil absorption performance standard. And this would be exactly where we'd need it.
I think we have to do a little bit more homework on that too, because we have some information now from MAC, and we have some information from a person within the state. We've got to reconcile those and see if there are other resources. I'll be going to MAC with the information that the person from the state provided to get their opinion on that, and a request for any additional information or resources that we should consider. They ultimately, MAC did say that at some point in time that if we wanted to do this, we would probably have to work in consultation with the Board of Health, because there would be potential.
No.
We're doing non-septic.
This is
Right.
non-septic, so it
Right.
doesn't come in, it's,
But they did indicate that there can be relationships involved, so just
Oh.
want to touch the bases and make sure
yeah.
that everything is
Right.
lined up, the stars in alignment, rather than having something come back later on and give us trouble. And then it'd probably also have to go to the bylaw level.
Correct, as
That we
opposed to the
could not-
regulation.
Right, we
That's
could
true.
not put in a regulation absent a bylaw. And that would require a town meeting vote.
Right.
So getting all that homework.
Coming up on one, we can just slip it in and.
You have to do those well in advance.
And they have to be done well, too.
True.
Not if we slip it in.
So I would guess we've got a little bit of homework, and we probably might need to take a look at some external consulting on this as well.
Oh, I think you're right. I think you're right. But that is something we should be working toward. I think Craig's point was well taken.
Yeah.
That we've kind of taken a Band-Aid approach to it over the years. And it's time really to kind of get focused and say, okay, what are we looking for? What are our criteria? And what are the performance standards so people know?
Right.
But we don't have to get hung
Meantime,
up
we're
on
in good shape here, and I think we're setting, at least on an interim basis, a new standard without having to have a bylaw. This is I shouldn't say a standard, a precedent.
Right, yeah, I agree with that. The only hang-up I've got on this is that as I look at the Town of Milton letter from John Thompson, all good points, there are certain conditions. Who's responsible for complying with these conditions? Like that, it looks like, well, one of the things that we should put into our order of conditions is that the conditions for DPW have to be recorded with the Registry of Deeds. Because,
That's why I think they should go with the order of conditions.
correct, I agree, but none of this has been done. As I'm looking at the letter, the system's to remain entirely private, and the homeowner will be responsible for all operation and maintenance. Town not liable for any damage to or blocking of the system, including from plowing and stockpiling snow. We set it back from the street, these leaching pits,
Right.
back from the street by a certain amount, I can't remember what, it was at least 3 feet off the curb.
I believe they're centered in the grass, roughly centered in the grass area.
Well,
Kind of
we
from the
were,
street.
we were
but-
pushing that back and forth because of the non-disturbance zone.
Right.
We were trying to take the top of bank and come back 20 feet, and in doing that, it puts it pretty close to the street. But I think the discussion was we want to keep it off the street by a certain amount. So it was actually pretty tight
Right.
as to where these leaching tanks are going to go.
We sort of knew that.
Right, and I think we did address it. So I think there's enough land there to accommodate.
Right.
Both the 20-foot
This was a
non-disturbance.
shoehorning in
Correct.
type of a situation.
That's correct. Now, having said that, I think it's going to be within 3 or 3.5 feet of the street. So my question for the homeowner is going to be, look, do you realize that, if they plow in a big storm, you could have a ton of snow on top of, as I understand, it's going to be a graded overtop vent, so to speak.
Right.
And I just want to make sure that they know what they're getting into. I don't know if they're going to have to go out and shovel it out. I can just remember last year with the plows pushing a lot of that snow back off of the roadway. I don't know where that grade is going to be.
Right.
I don't know how far back it is. I just don't want anybody to be surprised, because I think these are, from the town's perspective, these are good conditions. But somehow, somebody's going to have to put pen to paper, and the homeowner's going to have to sign off on these. And I'd like that to be done so we can incorporate these conditions as agreed to by the homeowner into our order of conditions, which will then be recorded in the Registry of Deeds. But do you know, I mean, is John Thompson going to, run this to ground, or is the homeowner going to do it? I'm not sure who's driving the bus now.
Okay, from this point, after you give them approval, they have to file a permit with the town of Milton. And have that permit approved by the town engineer.
Sure, to cross the road and put the leaching tanks
Right.
into town property.
Correct, and they will all be inspected by the town engineer.
I understand that,
But the
but
problem, John asked if we could put these in our order conditions, because even if the homeowner signs these conditions for the public works, it will go in a folder in a drawer.
correct. So I agree
And if they
wholeheartedly
sell it,
that these exact
The
same,
next homeowner won't know they're responsible for
Correct.
it.
Yes,
So, but
yeah.
if it's in the order conditions, which is filed with on the deed,
correct,
if they do sell, the next owner will know they're responsible for the leaching field.
correct.
And
So
if we're
that,
establishing a precedent, we want that to be the case for anybody else who does this in that or a similar area.
correct.
Yeah.
And the last line of the last bullet on the last page of John Thompson's letter, it says, "The homeowner will sign a document detailing his understanding of these conditions prior to approval of any right-of-way permit for a system installation." Now, that permit's from the DPW,
Correct.
but we need to put that in here. I just don't know who's going to approve the language, because the
Yeah,
homeowner
who
could
puts
just
that
say,
document together?
yeah, okay, and then sign his
Oh,
name.
John Thompson will, the engineer.
He's going to do it. I'm not trying to,
Okay.
I just want to know where it's going to end up so that people don't go like this.
Oh, no, it will be up to him,
Okay, okay,
DPW, at that point.
all right. So that I think that, and I don't know that we can take a formal vote on this now, because it's not on the agenda, but we already took a vote that was contingent upon these kinds of conditions.
Correct.
So it just needs the
Clarification.
review by the town engineer to sign off on it, for it all to be resolved? We're waiting for the,
No, these are the conditions from the town engineer. And if we adopt them as part of our order of conditions, then he's happy, and he can actually get the
We are
sign off
too.
from the homeowner. And we are too. I just want to make
agree.
sure that everybody's comfortable that when we took the vote to approve it, it was kind of a little bit loosey-goosey. And I think the homeowner was here, and I know that, who's the engineer? He's a nice young
Jeffrey,
fellow.
and I spoke to him, saying that we're going to put the letter.
And he's okay with that?
He was fine with it. I said if he disagreed, did he want to come to the meeting? And he said he had no problem with that.
Okay,
Including it with the.
all right. I just want to make sure that everybody's
I think you're on
comfortable
safe
with
ground based upon my recollection of the meeting, that this would be incorporated into the order of conditions.
Yes, that's correct. We just didn't have the detail that's
Right.
contained in
We
this
had to
letter,
wait
which
that.
is dated January 12th. All right, but is everybody comfortable with the language that was included in John Thompson's letter? I am.
I am.
Okay,
Good.
all right,
So I can issue the order conditions.
yes. And what, I think because we addressed it specifically at the last meeting when we took the vote, I think we can take a vote to adopt these particular contingencies or conditions into our order of conditions.
That sounds fine, and vote on it.
Yeah, I think we should.
Yeah.
Okay.
So motion to adopt the conditions
As
that were
specified in letter dated January 12th
2016.
concerning 50 Rendell Park.
Okay. And moreover, that the order of conditions shall be recorded at the Registry of Deeds.
seconded?
Discussion? In favor?
I was not at the last meeting, so.
Oh, I wasn't either, but I was at the site walk.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Okay, all right.
3 anyway.
Thank you. We got it. We got the vote. Positive vote. All right, any other,
Business? We got a letter from concerning
Can we
the
talk
Henry's
about it?
building and,
which building?
The court, Then they go,
Conley and,
That's just for information, yeah, we can't discuss that.
okay. But we do have this for,
I actually have another one they sent that I will give you.
okay. So this is just the litigation that's ongoing.
Correct.
Yes. And for one other new item of additional business that is ongoing, I spoke to some of you earlier, but I think a week ago, last Friday, I forget who, Eversource called and asked for a certificate of emergency compliance that they could go in and clean up a hazardous waste spill. One of the transformers blew at 800 Brook Road, right next to Fontbonne, between Dudley Lane and Fontbonne. It's offset by, I don't know, 50 feet or so, 60 feet off of Brook Road. And of course, I said yes, because they've got to get, clean it up and put the fire out and pick up what they could, which they did. Clean Harbors went in, and as of last Friday, I got a call from the site saying that they had, Clean Harbors had completed their at least initial cleanup, and that is going to require some follow-up, because I don't know whether initial is conclusive.
We have not received any report from.
Okay. All right, and I told them that they had to do that.
Correct.
The second point was they needed to get a big truck in with 2 transformers, because the one that blew has to be replaced, and the other one was equally as decrepit, and they're going to replace that one as well. So they have a big truck coming in, and they had a crane to come in to pick it, to pick the bad one out and get it out of there, which they've done. And the second one is to get the crane back in, probably this Wednesday. Today's Tuesday. Think they're going to do it tomorrow?
Either Wednesday or Thursday.
Okay. So they asked to cut a tree that they couldn't get the crane in. The crane is 16 feet off of the road, and they get hung up. You can see in these pictures here that they were having problems. So they actually cut one just to get the crane to allow them to do that, and then they called, and I think they took 3 altogether, or 2?
2.
2, okay. And I went down and I was there Sunday and took pictures, and I'll send them to Kathy, and then you can distribute them. They're on my phone. And my concern when I went down there was they didn't really give us a good spill response plan. And I had asked them on Friday, I said, listen, if you're going to have those things sitting there in the wetlands, and by the way, the wetlands surrounds the pad. The pad was put right smack in the middle of the wetlands. And it was
It's a new
built up.
pad.
What's that?
It's a new pad.
I don't know.
Or at least part of it is, that's newly poured.
just, formed up.
But they had to make it larger, remember, by 3 feet, they told you?
See the construction?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I was down there, looking at the construction. But it's within the old footprint that predates the Wetlands Protection Act, I think. Because it's been there forever. And yeah, they are enhancing it, but it's still within that same old footprint.
Gotcha.
And I'm not sure that's part of the emergency that they're increasing it. But I did get concerned with a couple of things. One is that there's some staining on the ground near the existing, that is the other old one, and I don't know if something's been leaking or not. I can't tell. There's a lot of gravel around there, so if it was leaking, it would have gone right through the porous gravel. The older transformers, and this one is clearly, the 2 of them are clearly old, tend to have PCBs. They're not supposed to, but I guess it comes from the deterioration of the oil, the petroleum product, that creates the PCB, so over time a lot of them will develop it. And I say that it's only something I've been told recently. I don't have any scientific knowledge of that. But I asked, well, you're putting new ones in, can you get that these are PCB free? And it was like dead silence. And he said, well, they're new transformers to Milton. I said, well, what does that mean? He said, well, they're not exactly new. They're replacement. And I said, well, where do they come from and how old are they? He said, I don't know. So I asked Eversource to provide some testing.
They rebuilt transformers.
Yes. And he said, well, yeah, they've been tested. So he sent me the documentation, which I confess I can't read. So I called an LSP that I know, David Lang, who has been, I think he was like 20 years on the Beverly Conservation Commission. I've used him for years, although I haven't talked to him in years. My firm has used him, and I just said, listen, can you read these for me? And he said, I can't tell you about the PCBs, but I can tell you that they're contaminated. I don't know what that means. So we've got to get back
What
to
do you mean, that
Eversource.
these in particular are contaminated, or in general, that?
No, these.
The old ones.
No,
The new
ones, the
The
replacement.
replacements are
Replacements.
contaminated?
Yeah.
Oh.
And I've got a copy here, I believe.
Well,
I'll
we
see if I
may
can find it.
need a cease and desist then, before they completely put them in.
Right.
I can't tell, but this one is the present transformers with an S on it. Now, I don't know what that means, but let me back up and say, I asked Eversource, what are your performance standards? And he said, they're clean for us if they're less than 50 parts per million. I said, okay, what about DEP? What are the DEP performance standards? And he said, well, it's a little confusing because they use the term non-PCB. He said, if you ask them, they'll say that means no PCBs. To us, it means less than 50 PCBs. So there's a little controversy. These test results seem to say the present transformers, and I can't tell if this is the one they took out, because what they took out was much smaller than what's still there.
That's why I asked the question.
There's a lot of material still there. And it says contaminated as I'm looking at it, but I can't tell if 362 in Milton is a piece of what left and what.
I think that the information you have there is incomplete. It's like a piece of something a piece of something.
Right.
And it might be a page or a partial page out of a report or a form that they have, and I don't think that that can stand on its own without more backup in terms of describing what it is. It's missing all the titles. It
Right.
doesn't. Nothing is labeled. It's like someone's spreadsheet on their desktop that they use to store information. It really is that as a document isn't informative.
Right. And I think that's Herbie Glick. That's the fellow from Eversource that I was talking to. He's a nice fellow, and he just said, I'll send you what I can get. He called somebody else, and somebody else said, okay, I'll forward it to you, and that's what the email.
Well, maybe the right thing to do here is a cease and desist until they can provide us information about what they're proposing to install. Because I don't think that stands, that on its own isn't enough for us to say that what they're proposing is viable.
You are correct. The flip side of that is that this transformer, or these two transformers together, control about half the power in the town of Milton.
Well, then they should be able to respond really quickly.
Yeah, they should. They should. But I just want to make
I
sure.
was down there, the Super Bowl game was like, it was Michael.
Well, we have power now, so they're running on some kind of a standby, right?
No, they can run on what they've got in existence right now.
Oh, okay.
So this is,
significant.
I can't tell if this is one or two new ones. I don't know what that is.
So you're saying the old
That's
one that's
there
in place,
now.
the old one that's in place
It's still running.
Is still running. It's at the end of its life. It's still running, but it's adequate capacity. This is the redundant one.
You are correct.
They put two in. One of them's redundant. We've lost the main. They're running on the redundant.
Correct.
It has a limited life, and they want to replace them before they're gone.
Correct. So they're going to replace two. I don't know if that's one or two, but that's what came today.
Well,
And
I
that
think that they
apparently
need to
is what this
provide
is.
us. We need to tell them that they can't proceed until they've satisfied that these equipment isn't contaminated. It's clean,
Clean.
right?
Yeah,
They
clean.
can't just bring something in off someone else's bad
What
site
I
and
couldn't
say it's new
understand from
to
the
us.
conversation, based on the information they provided, was whether the replacements were contaminated and are now clean, or they are contaminated, and what degree of contamination.
What
And if it's-
Herbie told me was that they were tested and they're clean pursuant to
Their
Eversource standards.
definition.
Correct.
Right.
When I pressed him on whether or not they were
DEP.
clean pursuant to DEP standards, he said, well,
Skip,
they
right.
they say it's, the word is non-PCB. He said, I don't know if that means no PCBs or non-PCB contaminated, because if you ask us, it's not contaminated if it's less than 50 parts
So we
per
need
million.
answers to all
And
of
could there be
these
any other
questions.
contamination
Right.
other than PCB?
Yes.
True, right.
And that's what my
That's where I
concern
was-
is, because when I look at this, the current one says, if you read across the top, it says contaminated at the top. That's why I don't know how to read that. That's why I
Right.
called the LSP Dave
But
Lang.
there's no definition.
And
of
he
it.
said, well, yeah, it's contaminated.
The top
no
of the
title.
table is
It
gone.
says it is. Right, but we don't know if it's a PCB problem or something else. But it really shouldn't matter. We don't want them putting contaminated fluids into our wetlands. Now, the other thing...
It's like
which is-
saying you've got cancer. Oh, great, what kind, where is it? Da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, right.
Only a
Good
little.
luck, good
Yeah,
luck.
only a little.
By whose
So-
standard?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
have it, right?
Now, the other thing is they've got parked, and again, this is literally in the middle of the wetlands, and my pictures show that when I was there on Sunday, nobody else was there, and they've got a backhoe in there with all the hydraulic lines, and they've got a bobcat in there, and that's probably within 10 feet of the water. So I had asked them Friday, make sure you've got
Down
some
by the
kind of-
road?
What's that?
The water down by the, is that,
No, the water actually encircles the pad, except for the road.
okay,
If it's
I'm
got
with you now.
It's got 3 sides of water, and the other side is the road, the entrance road.
Okay.
Does it have to go back to that same location? They
Yes.
can't move. It does. Why?
Well, that's where all the connections are, that's where the pad is, there's a foundation. You can see the footings. It's a heavy-duty pad, it's not just a layer of concrete. This is down 4 feet.
I assume that if that's handling half of the town of Milton, the power feed lines coming into that
sure.
location are probably really big.
You can't move it.
Yeah, right. And I understand when it went in there, that was, the swamp, so let's stick it in the
Yeah,
swamp.
right.
But I think we should be
Those were the
careful, and I'd like to tell them, look, try to store your hydraulic equipment outside of the wetlands. I mean...
Okay, so how do we proceed on this? Do we get them to come before us the next?
No, we don't have enough time. This is an emergency
Okay, see, that's what-
certification.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that doesn't give them the right to put in bad equipment.
Correct. So this is all happens, I was there
Fast.
Sunday, and this is Tuesday.
Okay.
And I guess I dropped the ball yesterday on not pursuing them. But I didn't get the call back from Dave Lang until today.
Yeah.
And he just said, yeah, they're contaminated.
Right.
So I think we've got, if you can reach out for Joe Lynch, because I talked to Joe Lynch at length on Friday, and we're pretty much in sync. We need the town needs the electricity. We don't want to.
We don't want everyone to get mad at us because
Especially if they
have
have
no
electric heat.
electricity.
We don't want to slow the process down. It is a public safety and a public health issue. But if they're going to put something in, we might as well get something that's clean.
Right.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
That's
Well,
appropriate.
If we don't put the pressure on now, it's a total lost opportunity.
Okay, an alternate strategy would be to allow them to install it with the understanding that it's a temporary installation until they can prove that it is an appropriate and acceptable piece of equipment.
Yeah.
So if they want to install it with the understanding that if it's found to be contaminated, they need to remove it
And replace it
ASAP.
with something clean.
Right.
Yeah.
So if they've got a concern about the whole system going down and losing power to the entire half of the town, then we need to say, this is on the basis that it will be a clean, PCB-free piece of equipment that's being installed, pieces of equipment that are being installed. If they're not, and found not to be at a future date, they're going to need to replace them.
So we can't do a cease and desist. They have to do the work to get the power, but they still need to come before us the next meeting
Right.
to answer our questions.
And to show us that they are clean,
Correct.
PCB-free.
Okay,
Sound good?
right. And do you have Herbie Glick's, I've got his email, so I can contact him that way. But will you see, I'll call you tomorrow morning, but if Joe's around, I'd like to coordinate it so we
But
can do
Joe did
this.
speak to him this morning.
He did. Did he talk to him about, these criteria that have been submitted to us?
No.
So what sort of documentation do they have from us?
There's
that
got to be
they-
something better than this, because I agree with you. This is a piece
That's,
of
John,
the
it's
test.
not worth anything.
But John, what do they have
Yeah,
at
it's
this
not even-
point?
It's not even a whole table.
No, it's not even on
No.
the table.
The headers are gone.
Yeah, it's a piece of a piece.
What do they have from us? What's their understanding of what they're allowed to do or not allowed to do at this point?
The emergency certification was only to clean it up. That's what they asked for, that's what I gave them.
Okay.
So this new installation isn't covered under the emergency?
I don't think it needs to utilities, does it?
They're certainly exempt from certain things, but not everything. It's like the state highway comes in, but they still have to, they still file.
Okay.
But they're certainly exempt from the town bylaw, absolutely. But
Okay.
I'm not sure they're not exempt from the Wetlands Protection Act completely, but they get a free pass in certain areas.
But I don't think they need that permission as far as equipment goes.
Well, one question, does the town have an agreement with them in terms of what they can install in terms of contaminated equipment? Are they allowed to install whatever they want in town at any point in any place, or are there limitations on the equipment in terms of its cleanliness and state requirements?
The state requirements say that they shall be non-PCB oil inside the transformer.
Okay, so I would say
Whatever
non-PC.
whatever that
Yeah,
means.
but we can interpret that based on DEP, right? So
Yes,
based on DEP, based on the state regulations, they cannot install a piece of equipment that has PCBs in it, period, point blank, nothing. So if they install something that has PCBs in it, we're in a position to say, remove it. Based on the state regulations, you're installing a faulty piece of equipment within the wetland. So they need to come in front of us and show us that the equipment that they're installing is non-PCB.
right. And they may say, that's what this second page shows.
So they need
It
to
doesn't
provide-
mean anything to me.
Doesn't mean anything to us. They need to show us the whole thing, and it needs to be,
Right.
it's not less than
Where
50.
that came from.
It's not less than 50 parts per million, it's non-PCB. And it's not their interpretation of what non-PCB means, it's what DEP's interpretation of non-PCB means.
Agreed. Who do you talk to? Do you talk to Rachel Freed at DEP if you have a question?
No, it's usually Pam, Rowan, I think? I speak to Pam. I forgot her last name.
All right, can you email that
I
to
have
me
two.
tomorrow morning?
Yes.
And then I'll follow up with her, because when I've had questions in the past, I've called Rachel Freed, and she's been very good. In fact, I called her on the snow, during the big storms, plural, last year, and we didn't know where to put the snow.
I think I have Rachel's email too.
Yeah, if you could send them both to me, that'd be great. Because she was very good, because at one time, there was a plan to close off Harlan Street and just dump the snow there, including into the wetlands on both sides. And DEP said, no, you can't do that. You can dump it in the ocean if you want. You can even dump it in the river, but you can't dump it in the wetlands.
That was a one-time only emergency.
Correct. Right, but it was limited to the ocean and the
Waterways,
river, but not the wetlands, which I thought was interesting.
Well, because they both flush and the wetland doesn't.
Right, salinity kills
Percolates
what's
down.
in the wetlands.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll follow up on that and then get their response back to everybody through Kathy. Okay, so everybody's up to speed on that.
You've had an exciting weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Great holiday, John.
Anything else on additional business?
No.
Motion to adjourn? Done. All right, thanks all.